So how to get the most out of this course? You may have a clear vision of what you want to get from this course or no idea whatsoever. There may be sections of the course that you find incredibly relevant and ones that don't so much apply to you. But the most important thing I will say is do the full course. Watch all of the videos. Take notes as you go because there are many tips and hints along the way for you to pick up. And also do the activities at the end of each section because these will enforce your knowledge. Now, we're going to be using a series of specialist equipment that's available in many different places. If you already have the equipment, that's fantastic because we'll reinforce your skills and you'll pick up some interesting knowledge along the way. If you don't have the equipment, then you'll be introduced to a whole new series of brewing techniques and you'll definitely fall in love with one of them. So coffee, of course, begins with the bean, and we're going to be using two different single origin beans today.
One is, yeah.
And one is a blend.
Indeed.
So take us through, Henry, the beans that we're going to be using today, because I think it's important for people to know what are good beans and what are bad beans, and work out what they like.
Okay. The top hat is from Nicaragua. It's from an estate called La Bastilla. And it's a single origin, direct trade, so we buy directly from the farmer, no third party or fourth party or broker, it's literally straight to the farm, straight to source. We've been dealing with these guys for over a year now, and it's our house blend. What you're going to get flavour-wise from that is quite floral, quite botanical. There's an espresso, quite acidic, and with milk, lots of caramel flavours coming through. The Bola is from Africa. It's a Kenyan AA, so that's the quality of the bean. And with this one, we're going to get blackcurrant flavours, kind of like Ribena in a cup.
Are those characteristic of the regions or the roast?
Characteristic of the region. So the Bola we have is quite unusual. It's from Kenya, and with the flavours we get from that, it's quite fruity. You've got that lovely blackcurrant coming through. And with the top hats, the Nicaraguan, you do get a lot of floral notes coming through from coffees from that. It's indicative of that region.
So we've got two different coffees here with two different roast profiles.
Yeah.
So can you tell us the difference between these two roast profiles that we've got here?
Sure. So here we have a sort of a new age kind of roast in that it's a lighter roast. It's indicative of a lot of the roasters in London, Australian, Kiwi roasters. The less we roast for, the more sugars are retained. And this one here is a classic Italian roast from southern Italy. And they're known for roasting longer, getting a bit more of a punchness to it, getting a lot more molasses coming through, black treacle.
So are these good for both espresso and brew?
No, not always. A single origin, like the two we have here, are perfect for brewing, but this one's been created as an espresso blend. It's roasted longer, and therefore if we tried that, say as a Chemex or AeroPress or other, we're going to get quite a bitter, nasty tasting coffee. Whereas this one, lighter roast, retains the sugars, we're going to get a lot more flavour coming through. Think of drinking tea black, basically. It's not as intense as the classic espresso, but with this one, a lot more flavour coming through.
So when we're looking for coffee to use in a brew, any sort of brew, we're kind of looking for that lighter roast, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
We want more fruit, more sugars.
Absolutely.
We want more of that flavour that's long on the palate as opposed to the punchy hit of a dark roast.
Correct, correct. Single origins, or generally on the actual beans you're going to buy, there should be some kind of indication as to what they should be used for. Have they been roasted specifically for espresso, or are they a brew roast?
Absolutely. And I suppose with beans as well, people often get confused with, if it's darkly roast, people will say, oh, that's a lot stronger, that's going to be full of caffeine. Whereas a lighter roast, they're going to go, oh, that's not got as much caffeine in it. And that's completely wrong, isn't it?
It is, it is. If we've got the same bean, but we're roasting slightly longer, the caffeine content's going to be the same. It's down to the makeup that dictates how strong that coffee is. Is it Robusta? Is it Arabica? Is it 100% Arabica? Because if that's the case, then we're only looking at about 1.5% caffeine. If it's Robusta, if it's a mix, if it was 100% Robusta, it's going to give you a headache. It's going to be really, really strong, and you're going to know about it. But majority of coffees out there on the high street will be a mix. So we'll have the Robusta to give the punch, and we'll have the Arabica for flavour.
So I guess you've got to really decide what you like and what your palate likes. If you like a lot of bitterness, then you would go for a much darker roast with a lot more Robusta in it. But if you're looking for that fruity flavour that I love, that's nice and long on the palate, go for a nice medium roast. It's single origin Arabica. Can't really go wrong.
Absolutely. Now your taste buds are totally different to mine and anyone else who walks into the room right now. So it's always good to experiment, to try other things. If you're used to a darker roast, if you're used to espresso, drinking a brewed coffee is going to be completely different to you. This is really subtle, whereas this is really punchy. So it's worth experimenting, trying, going out there to suppliers, getting a new coffee you haven't tried before, and what are the flavour notes? Is there licorice? Is there stone fruit, tobacco, molasses, caramel? So yeah, experiment.
So the activities you could do in this section, go and buy some different coffee beans, experiment, work out what your palate likes. It might actually be worth just sitting down, writing down what your favourite foods are, and maybe there's a common denominator in there, and looking for that in the next bag of coffee that you buy.
Yeah, why not? Sounds good.
So in this section, we're going to talk about the grind of the coffee. We're going to talk about different ways of grinding the coffee, different equipment to use, and what you're looking to get out of the grind, because it is a crucial part of coffee brewing. So we have in front of us 4 different types of grind. But firstly, I want to ask you, Henry, why is grind so important to the finished product?
It's all about extraction. So whether it be your classic traditional espresso machine, cafetiere, AeroPress or Chemex, each one of these is going to be right for one of those purposes. You put this through a machine and it's too coarse, it's going to be wrong. So it's finding the right grind for the purpose. If it's too fine, the extraction time is going to take too long. You're going to get a bitter, astringent, bitter tasting coffee. No good. Even for espresso, if it's too fine and it drips through, you're going to get really oily, molasses, really thick, bitter tasting coffee. So it's making sure that the grind is correct for purpose, whether it be espresso, Chemex, AeroPress or another.
So it's really important that, because coffee is made up in such a way that it doesn't grind evenly. All these pieces are all different shapes. So the amount of contact time it has with the water is relative to the amount of extraction that comes out of it. So we need to make sure that we get the correct level. And it's not too complicated, is it? It's quite easy to do. But we need to make sure that the amount of time those coffee granules are in contact with the water is correct for the different brewing type.
Absolutely. And each one of the brew methods we're going to do today has a certain time and ratio. How many grams to water and what the end volume should be. And
these 4 different grinds in front of us now, do you mind just taking us through
Sure.
each one?
So we'll start with this one here. This one here is really coarse. If you can imagine sort of grit, this would be perfect for a cafetiere. I'll go on to why shortly. If I were to use this for an espresso machine, the water and pressure is going to come through really quickly. No good. It's kind of like the Goldilocks analogy. Porridge is too hot, it's not quite right, perfect. Now we're looking for the perfect grind for the purpose. This one here, by touching it, it's like flour. Can you see that? Yeah, it's just like flour. That's going to be too fine for espresso. It's going to take too long to come through. For a mocha pot, perfect. That's the Italian style of making coffee on the stove, where the water comes up through, bubbles through. Any Italian household will have one in the cupboard somewhere.
You're hiding one up there.
Oh, yeah, I'm indeed. There we go. Then we come through to this one. This is more of our cafetiere AeroPress sorry, not cafetiere, Chemex. Chemex and AeroPress kind of grind. So not quite as coarse as the first one for cafetiere, but again, not good for espresso. And then we come through to the final one here, which if we touch it, give that a go, Rich. Yeah. So it's not quite like flour. It's not as coarse as this one. And it's not as coarse as this one, but yeah, it's like sand. That is perfect for espresso. If I were to use this though for like an AeroPress or other brew method, it's not going to be any good because the water is going to take too long to come through and we're going to get a bitter tasting coffee. No good. So this one, espresso. This one for Chemex and AeroPress. This one for a mocha pot. And this one for our cafetiere.
Super.
So we've got two methods of grinding, the electric and the handheld. And with this one, it'll tell us if we grind that much, we've got enough for 1 cup and for 2 cup. We can adjust the grind. If we want espresso, cafetiere or Chemex, we can adjust it accordingly on the size of the grind. On the electric grinder, all it is just a touch of a button and within seconds we've got instant ground coffee. Now, as Rich was saying, this is perfect for going traveling, going on a bike ride. It's portable. This, not so much so.
This is one for the home, definitely. And this is, if you get a good hand grinder and you look after it, keep it clean, and also like this one here has a thing on the side that shows you the correct level of grind. It can make life really easy and make your coffee great when you're out and about.
It's important to know as well how much you're grinding. So for the AeroPress, we're looking for 14 grams. So 14 grams of beans. So if we're going out on a bike ride, knowing that we've got a certain amount of beans to put in our grinder, that's going to give us the right amount of coffee for the purpose. And the same for any of the other brew methods, be it cafetiere, Chemex, whatever.
Do we have to worry about losing some beans in the grind, getting stuck in the grinder?
Yeah, it's important. If you think we need the full 14, 15 grams of coffee for the AeroPress, less than that, we're not going to get the full flavour. More than that, it's going to throw the taste. So it all comes down to the specifics, the variables again, that word that keeps them coming up.
Be exact.
Absolutely.
Be exact on when you're weighing out your coffee.
Yeah. And also remembering, we talked about which grind as well. Grit, sand, flour, and in between. So knowing which grind we're looking for just by touch. So again, the barista sensors. So touching it, knowing that once we ground it, does that feel okay? Yeah, okay. Might be slightly off, might be slightly too coarse, slightly too fine, but as long as it's pretty much what we're looking for, then it'll be fine.
And when you get to the electric grinder stage, once you've got your settings right after a few tries, it should always come out the same.
Absolutely. And it's worth mixing it up. As you said earlier, maybe by making it a little bit coarser or a bit finer, it will change the flavour of the coffee. So if you're happy with how it's tasting, great, but it's good to experiment.
And I'm just going to show you with the hand grinder, this is not unusual. You have to put some effort in, and it can take a while. So you have to put some effort in, it can take a while, but it's worth it. And it's a good little workout, you know, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But compared to what the electric grinder does, touch of a button.
Here we go. Done.
Done. And one of my favourite things actually in coffee is after it's ground, just take a big inhale. Just.
Oh, it smells good.
Yeah, that's one of the real treats in coffee. You should reward yourself with that moment. Have a good sniff of the coffee. And actually, Henry, I want to ask you, just before you grind all of that.
I'm going to be here for a while.
You are. Put that back on.
So we're looking, once you have ground, you are looking for that smell. If you haven't got that lovely aroma coming off, then the beans are stale. So they obviously haven't been kept in an airtight container. So that's really important to keep the freshness.
How close to, can I grind that a little?
Yeah, of course.
All right. How close to brewing the coffee, should you grind the coffee? Will it make a massive difference? Because as soon as you grind it, you start losing the freshness and you're going to sort of fall off a flavour cliff, aren't you?
Yeah, flavour cliff, I like that. So for an espresso machine, if we're grinding coffee for our espresso machine, you've got about 15, 17 minutes of freshness before it starts going stale.
So as soon as you ground it, about 15 to 17 minutes?
Yeah, basically. I mean, you can buy pre-ground coffee, but it's remembering keeping that lid on it. So it's kind of like the analogy of taking a can of fizzy pop, opening it in the morning, got that cool, sugary, nice flavour. Come back to it in the afternoon, what have you got?
Flat, syrupy.
Yeah, exactly. I know which one I prefer.
So now you know about grinding and how different grinds can really affect the output and extraction of your coffee. The different methods we've talked about, the hand grinder and the electric grinder as well. Now, each manufacturer has different settings. So for example, this hand grinder, you take off the lid and you adjust it inside. With an electric grinder, one built for coffee grinding like this, you will have different settings that you adjust accordingly. Get used to using them. A cheap alternative that I often use at home is a spice grinder. So the key to that is just to make sure that you're constantly aware of how fine your grind is getting. And any tips for coffee grinding?
Yeah, make sure you've cleaned out the spice grinder, Rich, before you use it. You know, chilies, curry powder, that kind of thing.
That's a very good point. And actually, you should always make sure that whenever you're grinding fresh coffee, whatever is left, take it out.
Absolutely.
Take it out.
Yeah. Stale beans is going to affect the flavour at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we're looking for ultimate freshness.
Consistency and quality.
So the activities you can do around grinding are pretty specific. Make sure you get used to the different types of grinds. So you're making sure that you know what the floury one is. You know when you've got a much coarser grind, looks like grit, when one is like sand. And I think that's very important so that you can use that knowledge properly when it comes to brewing the coffee. And I think in terms of actually not just looking at the coffee and seeing it,
it's definitely feeling it, yeah.
Feeling it as well, touching it.
Yeah, touchy feeling.
Touchy feeling.
Yeah.
And when people phone up and ask you about grinding, what's the first piece of advice that you would give them?
Literally, how does it feel? You grind off some coffee, or they're saying that it's coming through their machine too quickly, or their Chemex or whatever. It's the timing. How quickly is it coming through? And then I'll say, okay, right, take it right back, work your way back. The grind, how does it feel to you? Oh, it feels like it's kind of like flour, but then it's too fine for purpose. Or for an espresso machine, it's coming through too quickly. Have they put enough coffee in there? Have they measured out the right amount of coffee? Or is it too coarse? So it's, again, touching it, feeling it. How does that feel?
So, taking your activity a step further, why don't you recreate these 4 grind profiles and then work with one unit, say one AeroPress or one Chemex, and do it 4 different times and see the different coffee coming through, so then you know what's wrong and what's right. So now it's time to get down to actually brewing our coffee. There are 5 different brewing methods that we're going to show you. We're going to use the Chemex, the AeroPress, the Siphon, the Cafetiere and the V60. These are the most popular brewing methods that you'll see today, and they're all easy to do at home. Now we're going to show you the Siphon coffee technique. Now this is actually one of my favorite ways of brewing coffee, and I do this myself almost every other day really. I love the drama of it, the theatre of it, and also the brewing method itself is like a couple of 100 years old. Now there are a variety of different ways of brewing Siphon coffee. Normally it's to put your water in first and then put your coffee on top, which is a technique that you favour, Henry.
It is.
Whereas I have a little twist on it. So when I show you this technique, I don't want you to think that this is the final one. There's 2 different ways of doing it. One is to put your water in and then the coffee on top, and the other is the one I'm going to show you, which is to put your coffee in and then the water. Now, A coffee siphon is a beautiful piece of equipment and you don't see it very often. It's very rare to be used in a cafe or a restaurant because it does take a little bit of time. But once you get it right, it is the best way to make a dramatic cup of coffee. So I'm going to use 10 grams of coffee for every 150 ml of water. So if I can have 10 grams of coffee, please.
Sure, just going to weigh that out now.
So Henry's going to weigh out the coffee, so he's going to give me 40 grams of coffee because this is the 4-cup siphon. And I've preheated my water over here to 95 degrees. And that's quite important. I've also preheated my lower vessel and I wet my filter. So I'm going to take you around the different components we've got here. This is my upper chamber. Inside the upper chamber is my filter. Now the filter gets locked in place and all the coffee will stay outside of here and just the water comes through. That's very important. And I just need to make sure that my little magic hook on the bottom, which is really important. This is one of the most important things for the coffee siphon. Make sure that you are hooked on the bottom here. So now I've got the hook ready, I am going to prepare my coffee. So I'm going to grind this.
Do you want to just explain what this is about?
Oh yeah, please. Go
Yeah, I was going to ask you to.
Well, I've got the balls on the bottom so that when they come in contact with the water and the water starts to heat, they'll actually help to release the gases in the air in the water.
And also it helps to, I mean, this is probably the most scientific out of all the brewing process we're going to do today. This device here will also stop the main chamber from cracking as well.
This is good, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Would you like a siphon?
Yeah. Have one.
As Henry said, this is the most scientific way of brewing coffee because it uses the vacuum system. So,
do you want this in there or out?
I am going to have it out to begin with.
Cool. Okay.
I've set my grinder. I'm just going to adjust it a little bit. I'm going to leave it on there. I want the same sort of coarse grind as a cafetiere, the same grind. So very, very similar to the Chemex, essentially. I am going to have a manual grind. Alright.
And so you've got the kettle already ready as well with water primed.
So I've already got my kettle primed.
Oh yeah?
Lovely.
Oh.
Lovely, lovely. So I'm just going to put the coffee there for a moment and I'm going to fill my lower vessel. So my lower vessel is already marked with 600 milliliters of water. So I'm aiming for the measurement on this and I'm going to go just a tiny, tiny little bit over. There we go. Again, this is a great piece of equipment. So easy to use.
It's the theatre, isn't it? It really is. You'll see what we're talking about.
It is. So I've got my water here. I'm just above that 600 milliliter mark. And now it's time to get cracking. So I've already wet my filter and I put my upper chamber in. And this is where we disagree because a lot of people will heat the water right now, get it up there and then put the coffee in. But I do it this way because I love what happens. I really, really do. I'm going to put this back in. Okay, so here's my gas burner. You can use a halogen or you can use a wick and an oil burner, but I wouldn't recommend doing that because you can't manage the temperature properly. Halogen is fantastic as long as you can get it hot enough. Now, the thing with the coffee siphon is people do get really carried away. You know, you see people with temperature gauges hanging out of them, with the temperature gun with the red dot on it and all that sort of stuff. You don't need to get too serious. Just enjoy making the coffee. Now, what's going to happen here is
it's blooming. It's the same as the other processes like the Chemex, etc. Wetting the coffee, and you can see the water's now moving up through the chamber, and slowly but surely, it's soaking up all the coffee. It's actually saturating the coffee.
And this is about 1 atmospheric bar of pressure that's building up in here. So as the gas is expanding, it's forcing the water down. The only way it can escape is up this tube here and into the upper vessel. And as you can see, the coffee just starts to rise up. We've got it starting to go. And all I'm going to do when it gets about an inch, inch and a half up is just to fold my coffee in.
Just encouraging the bloom process to carry on here. So you can see we're getting a nice crust forming. All the coffee is now saturated, got some good bubbles, a nice crema on top.
Just folding the coffee in there. And now we've got to the point where there's no more water is going to come up, and I'm going to start timing for about 45 seconds. So put the timer on. I can lower the heat a little bit if I want, but not too much.
What happens if you do it too much, Rich?
Do you mean if you too much time?
No, too much. If you drop the heat too much.
Oh, if you drop the heat too much, your coffee is going to immediately drop down, and that's not what you want.
No.
It's not going to have a chance to brew properly. Whereas this short 45-second period I'm taking here is going to get me right in the gold cup zone. I love the way there's so much, so much gas coming off, so much crema.
Wow.
Just looking great. There's always going to be a little bit of water left at the bottom. Don't worry about that. Just to make sure the vessel doesn't crack. And I am at 45 seconds. So I'm just going to take the heat away. Just turn it off. And then what I find really important at this point is to just gently give it a few stirs to start this rotation going. And then, do you want to do the magic moment?
I really do.
It's a little thing we'll teach you. So Henry's just blowing on this gap here. So he just breathes his cold breath on here, that breaks the seal, and down it drops. So after you've left it for about maybe 3 or 4 seconds, just gently blow on here and down the coffee comes. And as you can see, what it's doing is taking the path of least resistance. So it can't stick to the sides. Oh, sorry, there's friction here in the upper vessel. So it's just going straight down this tube here. I just love the way this looks.
Yeah, yeah. Or if I ever see these done in a cafe, people will come and go, "Oh, I want one.
Yeah.
I want one." It's just a theatre of it, isn't it? Now this is a good sign. As with the other processors, we have the silage left over. It's domed, and this is a good indicator of a good brew.
Yeah. So, indicator-wise, if your dome is really pointy like a mountain, you've stirred too hard. You've given it too much. So just slow that down. If it's really, really flat, then what you've done is you've not stirred enough, and the coffee is just sat down. If it's slightly uneven, then you just need to be more careful with your strokes. But the key thing with the siphon is you can go online, you can do a lot of research about it. Everyone's got their different technique. You like to put the coffee in after. Some people like to leave the vessel tilted to one side and then bring it on top. Strip away the mythology and strip away all of that. Just find out what works for you. I really love making the coffee like this.
I mean, this is massive in Indonesia. You go out to Sumatra and this is how coffee's served. Yeah, you can get traditional espresso, but this is the drink of the nation. This is what they all drink. There you go.
Thanks, man. The reason why I just needed this, so I'm just going to put this, just going to gently rotate this. Be careful because this vessel is still hot, so just give it a gentle rotation.
And see the suction's now coming away.
And it comes. Thank you very much, sir.
And there we go.
A great way to tell if you've made a really good siphon is to actually hold it up to the light. And if you hold it up to light, you should be able to see it's incredibly clear. Really, really clear.
Yeah, look, there's two guys. Look, I can see two guys. This guy with glasses and the guy with moustache.
So a lack of sediment. That's lovely. And that is the coffee siphon.
Okay, now we preheated 2 cups and they're ready to go. Again, important to heat the vessel that you're going to pour into. Again, help with the flavour.
You can see that this coffee has a lovely colour to it. We brewed this, if we were to brew it for slightly less than 45 seconds, we would get more of a light caramel in terms of colour. And if we brewed it for longer, we would get a much, much darker brew. So there we go. It does come out quite hot from the siphon, so you need to leave it, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. Allow it a good couple of minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, just to drop in temperature. One, you don't want to burn your lip, but two, the flavors are going to really start working in that cup. And the cooler it gets, the more flavor comes out.
I cannot recommend this method highly enough for the end of a dinner party, or if you've got friends round, or if you just want to have a bit of fun with coffee. Experiment, play with it. There's different filters. You can use paper filters, which
Cloth,
are great.
yeah.
That's a cloth one in there. So after about 9 or 10 uses, you can either replace it. What I'll do is when I wash that up, I'll actually wash the cloth.
Yeah.
Make sure the coffee gets out. Metal ones, I don't think they've perfected it yet.
I'm not a fan, Rich. I'm not a fan.
No, steer clear of the metal filters maybe. I've found that on occasion they will break or that will let the coffee in.
Yeah.
Any more coffee siphon tips?
Just be patient. Just be patient. I'm desperate to get in there and have a taste, but you've got to really allow it to cool down.
Definitely.
Yeah. And safety first, really. Just be aware of what's hot, what's not. Everything here, black, is you can touch and hold that safety. You certainly don't want to be touching anything metal, and be careful once you're disattaching this from the main piece.
And I would say if you're starting to do a coffee siphon, then as Henry said, very, very popular in Indonesia, start with an Indonesian coffee, excuse me.
Yeah. So from Sumatra, what kind of coffee are you going to get from there?
I would start with a Sumatran coffee.
Arabica, because they've got a lot of Arabica
You
out there.
definitely do a nice Arabica, maybe one that's a natural processed.
Nice, okay.
That'd be a good start. Or you can have a Kopi Luwak if you can get your hands on a...
Expensive stuff.
It's expensive
Whoa.
stuff. If you get your hands on a proper wild organic one, we're going to give this coffee a try. I love coffee siphon.
Yeah.
So
Got real depth of flavour there, haven't you?
yeah,
you really
that's
do.
the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You can get a real smoothness if you get your ratios right
Yeah.
with a coffee siphon.
Yeah.
You get a really, really good smoothness. So in summary, I used 10 grams of coffee. I used 150 milliliters, grams of water. Now you can adjust that for your flavour and depending on how long you brew it for. I brewed it for 45 seconds when it was about an inch off the bottom. And that's my technique that I use. 3 quick stirs at the end, down it comes, blow on the joint, and then it will break the seal. I would say, Henry's got his different technique for making coffee siphon. Have a look at that as well. But if you really want to enjoy good coffee, get your hands on a coffee siphon. So now we're going to make an AeroPress. This is an incredibly popular way of making a really good cup of coffee. Really easy to do, very simple, not a lot that can go wrong. And, well, over to you really, Henry.
Okay, so the device itself is basically a modern conception of the cafetiere, created in America. And basically, it's so easy to do. You can take this away with you camping, on a bike trip, whatever. So if you've got that handheld grinder, you've got a flask of hot water, you've got an AeroPress, then you can make coffee. So first and foremost, we're going to weigh out 15 grams, which is already done. It's got it in said grinder here. Have you ground that?
Yep, already ground.
Wow.
So just
well ahead
ground
of
that
me.
right now.
Oh, get in. Okay.
It's just a treat to do that we do every time.
So you'll see it comes in 3 parts. So we've got the main part here, the filter, the plunger, and as opposed to your normal cafetiere, there's a lot, because of the vacuum there, the rubber plunger, there's a lot of suction there, and that's going to help with the extraction. So going to take the water filter paper, there we go. It's really important to wet this beforehand. It's the same as all the other processes. We want to get rid of that starchy taste that could potentially taint the coffee. We also need enough water just to heat the main chamber. So first and most, we're going to take this part here of the AeroPress. That just gives me a bit of stability. So you can see that these two fit together nicely.
And that
Like
easily just put on there, didn't it?
Done, just like that. If I could just have a bit of water, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, thank you very much indeed. So, just going to pour a bit in there.
This water has been preheated to 95 degrees. Do you think it matters between 93 and 98? Or?
Yeah, you've got temperature water is going to affect the flavour. The hotter it is, potentially going to burn your tongue. So with the siphon, you had a flame there, so it was a constant. It was already at a temperature. It's maintained, but it's also increased, so potentially you are going to burn yourself. So we also don't want to burn the coffee. So what we've done here is we've wet the paper. The chamber's warmed through. We're ready to go. So the next step is to add the coffee. So I'm just going to pour in, there we go. That's every last grind. There we go, just going to put that over there. Next step is, as we did with the others, is to bloom. So we're going to pour a bit of water over the grind just to expose them.
So that's just a little bit of water to get the gases going.
Yeah.
Get the gases
Yeah,
released.
you can see the bubbles, you can see the crema as well. It's bubbling away. Going to give that a few minutes. And then shortly we're going to be adding this. And it's important, safety first, to hold onto the main body of the AeroPress and add this. So
you poured a little bit of water in
Yeah.
there, and you're going to leave it for 60, 90 seconds?
yeah,
2 minutes?
yeah. I can pour off the excess there, just
Okay.
pour that away. And now we can pour the rest. There's two ways of using the AeroPress. There's this method or the inverted. So we could give that a little stir if you want. Can you see the crema's changed colour? I'm now going to add the main part. Just going to leave that there a few minutes. And the whole process is going to take about 15 to 20 seconds. We want a slow plunge. I'm using a frothing jug there. It's just perfect for the extraction itself, and also easy to pour at the end of it.
But you
see
can do
this-
this straight into a cup?
Yeah, straight into a cup. Again, heat the cup. And as this is metal, it's a conductor, so we've got a nice heated vessel, and the cup's already heating through.
So you're just forcing this down?
Yeah. What I'm doing is there's a lot of resistance. I'm forcing down. You can hear it dripping down. You can see there's a little bulbous mound. And can you hear that? That hiss. It means the brew's come to an end. We're done.
So straightforward. So easy to do.
Got our cup there, ready to go. So this is going to be a bit more flavoursome than, say, the Chemex. It's quite on a par with the Siphon in a depth of flavour. Incredibly popular, incredibly easy. Took literally 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, done. So again, we can let that cool for a little bit.
So tell me about the actual timings and take me through what just happened, because it was so simple and so straightforward. It was just coffee and water, but there's more to it than that. So just take me step by step on what just happened.
So remember, we did the same as we did with all the other process. We wet the filter. We want to get rid of any of that starch flavour that could potentially come through. Pour off the excess. We then start the bloom. So we wet the coffee, pour off the excess. That's going to drip through, extract through. Don't want that. It's going to be quite crazy in flavour, so we can just get rid of that. Then we add the rest of the water, potentially give it a stir. You don't necessarily have to, but some believe that helps with the flavour. And then it's a question of a slow plunge. You don't want to force it through. You You want to allow it to take its time, good brewing process. As with all of these brewing methods, it's allowing a certain amount of time. If you force it, you're going to throw the flavour. If you leave it too long, you're going to get a bitter, burnt tasting coffee because the coffee's been exposed to water for too long. So those are the variables which will ensure you get a decent cup of coffee at the end of it. And as I said, you can drink this literally anywhere. See how easy that was. Water, coffee, AeroPress, mug, done.
Fantastic. And just timing wise, how long do you leave it before you plunge, would you say? 90 seconds?
Yeah.
It depends on your flavour, I suppose. It depends on your palate. If you like, I don't like really strong coffee, so I wouldn't leave it for 2 minutes. I'd probably go for 60 seconds on an AeroPress.
Yep, okay. You're allowing it to bloom, and again, it's going to come down to individual taste, but you're looking for about a minute, minute and a half.
And then job done.
Yeah, should we give it a go?
Let's do it. I love the way the AeroPress is so simple, so easy to do. So that was 15 grams of coffee.
Yep.
And then allowed to bloom for a minute, minute and a half. Now, we talked about yield earlier.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a little bit? Explain a little bit about what yield is while I enjoy this coffee.
So basically, we've got the ground coffee, 15 grams, 240 grams of water. Once those two combine and we force through the coffee, we expect to have 210 grams on the scales ending up in the cup. That's what we're looking for, the end product. And for all of the brew methods, there's an expected yield, a sort of ratio, if you like, of the coffee in its dry form with the water together. Once wet and once brewed, we'll end up with the yield. How's that for you?
I really like that. It's so different. There's so much fruit at the front of it.
Yeah.
It's like really like front of your mouth. It's like, yeah, man, let's get excited. It's got a purity about it.
How does it compare to the siphon, taste-wise?
I think the siphon has a longer taste profile.
Right.
And I like the clarity of the siphon. And you get more butter in the siphon.
More butter?
You get more caramelly butter in the siphon.
Okay. And again, that's going to come down to individual taste, because Rich's taste buds are completely different to mine and completely different to yours. And also taste profiles, they'll change as well. My taste for certain coffees has changed. So I like a lot of light roast now.
So this is the Chemex technique. This is very popular and very easy to do. And if you get it right, it makes a fantastic cup of coffee. It really does. So to begin with, we have to weigh out our coffee. So Henry, how much coffee do we need?
For this one, we're going to use 24 grams. So I'm going to take 24 grams of beans here, weigh it out, grind it, and then I'm going to put it into the Chemex for the brew. So for this, we don't need 3 of these. So we don't need the espresso or the mocha pot. We're going to be using this one, which is for the Chemex, and the other one, which is for the cafetiere, we don't need. So just to remind ourselves, it's not quite as gritty, it's not flour, it's not sand, it's just a little bit grittier than sand. So in between really coarse grind and sand, if that makes sense.
And
so
24 grams is per cup. So if we were going to do 2, 3 or 4 cups, we'd just multiply that.
Yeah.
Super.
So first of all, turn on the scales. Kitchen scales are fine. I'm using a brand called Hario, which is a good one to use. So the first thing we do is tare it, so it's really reading at 0.0, taking into consideration the weight of the cup. So that's there. Then take our spoon.
Henry is very proud of this spoon.
Really proud of the spoon. I made the spoon.
You don't have to use a homemade spoon. Did I say 24 grams before?
Oh yeah, you did. Thanks.
It's very important to get your measurements right. So the 24 grams was the key starting point, isn't it?
Yep. Less than that, we're not going to get a full-bodied coffee. More than that, again, it's going to affect the taste. So now we have our beans weighed out. We're going to pop it into the grinder. Making sure that nothing else is in there. Checking the chamber. It's empty, it's clean, good. Put the beans in. Now we've set it at the appropriate grind, which is fairly coarse, but not as coarse as cafetiere. So next thing, turn it on. So we've got the amount of coffee there. Give that a smell, Rich. It's good, isn't it?
It's one of the best things in the world, smelling fresh coffee.
Okay, so we've got it there. I'm just going to pop it back into the glass. And make sure you catch every last grain. No one gets left behind. So pop that back in there. Now we're on to the Chemex itself. You'll see that it's got a spout here. And now that's going to come in use to us very shortly, and it's got this lovely wooden collar here because glass is obviously going to get quite hot, so that protects us. We're going to take a filter paper. Now this is, you see, like that. This is, once we turn it into a funnel, you'll see that one side is one paper and the other has the other three sides. So what we're going to do is wet this paper so we lose any of that starchy flavour that's going to affect the taste of the coffee.
Now I'm going to get the water. Sorry, you've got the water. And where did you get that from? And this is actually boiled to about 98 degrees, that water. So it's not boiling, because boiling water isn't what you should have, is it?
No, it's going to affect the flavour of the coffee. So for tea's brewed at different temperatures, be it green, white, Assam. So anything from 80 to 90 to 100 degrees. So for coffee, we're conscious that we don't want to burn the coffee. So the first thing we're going to do is, see the spout is here, the three side papers are there. We're now going to pour some water in a circle, making sure we've got all the paper it's now been wet. And at the same time the water is coming down, it's going to heat the main body of the vase itself.
So we've wet our filter paper, we've got our water, we've got our coffee ground and ready to go.
Okay, we poured off the excess so the actual Chemex is nice and warm, ready to go. We've got our 24 grams of ground coffee and it's the right coarseness. We now have 384 grams of water, not at boiling. We're now going to put the Chemex onto the scales. We're looking for a yield of 336 grams at the end. So if we tear it so it's measuring at no grams at all, we then put our 24 grams in. This next bit is really important. We're going to bloom it, which is basically wetting the coffee, exposing it to the water, and that starts the brew process, allowing every grain of coffee to be saturated in water. And then as soon as that starts dripping, we can then add the rest of the water slowly at an ever decreasing circle, starting in the middle and working our way out towards the edge of the Chemex. So the first thing I'm going to do is wet the coffee. Let's try and do that as quickly as possible. And then this is called blooming. So you can see some of the coffee is already starting to come through. We've exposed all of the coffee to water. We can now begin the brew process. We don't pour everything in, and this kettle is devised so it allows us to pour a limited amount and control the pour itself. So
and all these bubbles we're seeing coming off, that's the gas escaping, isn't it?
Indeed. We can also encourage the brew as well with a paddle. Not everyone does this, but it's also just ensuring that there's no coffee that's stuck together. It's just gentle stir. And we can continue to pour. Now the scales are telling me it's about 200 grams, so we're almost there.
And once the coffee starts coming down, because we've got the grind right, this is sort of the right drip speed, yeah?
Yeah, you can see it's not going to, it's coming through fast enough to ensure the brew. Now we're looking for 3.5 minutes to 5 minutes for the whole process, the whole brew itself. Ideally, I'm looking for about 3.5. And on the other side of the scales, we have a timer. You can use your phone. If your scales do have that device, you can press the button, allowing you to measure the time it's taking to brew the coffee. You'll see you've got this nice color coming through. So it's finished its brew. It's in the allotted time. The coffee's exposed. We've got the waste coffee in here. So now we're just going to get rid of that. That's good to serve.
Voila.
Now, what we would do before we serve is the cups themselves. We'd heat them. So this has had some hot water in it already. Just going to pour that off. That's nice and warm. So it doesn't have to be china, it could be glass, but either way, you want to put some hot water in for the vessel to be warmed through. It's going to make the coffee taste nicer. Okay, Rich, over to you. You do the honours.
And this is a common form of coffee you'll see in a specialty coffee house, won't you? But it's so easy to do at home. Once you get used to it, it's really, really easy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's different to, say, the traditional Americano, which you get through the espresso machine. The Americano is a bitter, quite full-on flavour. This is a lot more subtle. So Rich is slurping there, and what he's doing is bringing in oxygen here to add more flavour, bring more flavour, expose air to his tongue. So we have on the tongue sweet, sour either side, and bitter at the end there. Also, your left and right of your tongue will pick up a little bit of saltiness too. So what we're looking for is a full-bodied, rounded taste and flavour, which is encompassing all of those. Bit of sweet, bit of bitterness, bit of sourness. So, how does it taste?
It's lovely. It's got a really lovely, like long caramelly finish on it.
Has it? Great.
Now, as Henry said, the way I'm tasting the coffee is so that I'm exposing my mouth with a lot of oxygen. Feel comfortable to adapt your own way of tasting coffee. We wouldn't recommend doing it like this in a coffee house unless you're going to
get some strange looks, aren't you?
Particularly from the barista, who might feel a little bit intimidated.
Yeah, but it's just like for those people that appreciate a good glass of wine.
Yeah,
you bring in the oxygen, you bring in the air to add more
flavours.
Yeah,
more flavours in. And wine has what, 400 taste points, and coffee has 1,200.
Yeah.
So you gotta taste it all. So, in summary, that is the Chemex. That is how we've made it today and how you can make it at home. So just to recap, 24 grams of coffee.
Yep.
And water-wise, we're looking for 384.
Correct.
So 384 grams of water, all easily done on your kitchen scales. 3.5 minutes to actually brew the coffee itself. And I'd say your main tip for using the Chemex was that when you had the kettle like this, it's just making sure you've got the water going in the middle and you've got a nice gradual rotation round.
Yeah, you're not putting all the water in at one time. It's worth it. It's a time. It takes time, but it's worth it. So minimum of 3.5 minutes, maximum 5 minutes. Go over the 5 minutes, which you shouldn't do because the amount of water there, and you're going to get a bitter tasting. It's not going to be as sweet and as flavoursome as it could be. So again, looking at the variables, it's paying attention to the detail.
So now we're going to do a V60, which is again a lovely way of making a 1 or 2 cups of coffee, or you can even do more with this, can't you?
Yeah, there's 2 types here, and what you'll see on both of them is there's this kind of bulbous effect going on. And that really helps with the whole brewing process and also retaining temperature. So don't be perturbed by the devices. This one tends to be just it's the filter there. We take that off at the end, put the lid on, and that's ready to go to the table to serve. So we're just brewing straight into that. And this one, this is my favorite one as well. I take this one everywhere with me. I like the AeroPress, but I like this one also. So once we've finished the brew, we take this away. Again, that's ready to serve. So what Rich and I are going to do now is put our filters in, wet the filters again, and we do this to get rid of any bleached sort of paper effects. We don't want that to taint the flavour of the coffee, the ultimate brew at the end. So by wetting it, we're trying to get rid of any of the flavours that could affect the overall taste.
We're shaking it up a little bit by doing two. Two exactly the same device, same technique, but just different models really.
24 grams a piece.
24 grams. Kettle is ready.
There she goes. There she blows. So I'm going to do mine.
Yep.
You do yours.
I will.
So what I'm going to do is just wet the paper. Get a circular motion. Over to you, my friends. Thank you.
Wetting that paper.
So I'm letting we wet the paper. Water's come through. That's finished. Just going to pour off the excess.
I just rotated my paper there just to make it easier.
Okay, my paper's wet. I'm ready to go. Got my coffee ground here. Again, not too coarse, not as coarse as cafetiere. Similar to the AeroPress, not as fine as the espresso grind. Pop that in there. There we go. Every last grain.
Nice warm lower chamber there.
Okay.
Okay.
Same amount. Okay, I'm going to pour first.
You go.
Just going to go for that. I'm just going to basically, so again, we're blooming. So we're exposing the coffee grind to the water. A lovely crema coming along there. Got a nice head to it, bubbling away. Oh, do you want to do yours?
Do you want to explain why we're doing it on the scales?
I'm looking for the yield. So the coffee and the water together will give me the yield, which is the volume of coffee I need for the perfect cup. Any less, it's going to throw the taste. Any more, again, it's not going to result in the perfect cup. So I've now bloomed. I've got a nice thick consistency. I'm now going to add more water. You can see that's bubbling away. Circular motion. Over to you, sir.
It's my left hand, controversial.
Oh, nice circular motion. So Rich is making sure that all the coffee is exposed to the water. You can see it's brewing away. And we know it's the perfect grind because it's coming through at a nice consistent time. Lovely colour to it as well. Yield-wise, we're looking for
343.
Okie dokie. Yeah. All right.
363.
Thank you.
See, that was a test. So we're looking to get 363 grams on the scale. And as soon as we hit that point, we're done. That's when we've got the best possible extraction out of this coffee using this method.
Allow me.
Please do.
I'm just trying to catch any of the coffee that's against the filter there.
So you just, what Henry did there was just take the kettle, the water around the edge so that the coffee that was getting caught up on the sides just gently slid down again.
Yeah, so we've got all of the coffee grounds exposed and getting maximum flavour out of this. Now I'm coming to the end of my brew now. You shouldn't be too far behind me.
Do we stir?
You can do, but I find with this one, I mean, I would do it with the Chemex, bigger amount, bigger volume. But this one, generally you don't. You might find yourself that giving it a stir, encouraging it, does affect the flavour. But if you're pouring correctly in a circular motion, you're getting all of the coffee grinds in there, should be fine.
I damp sometimes, like right at the beginning. I just dab a little bit just so the coffee gets submerged.
Good call.
Just so that it gets in there.
Okay, I've got the right volume in there, so I'm just going to discard this. There we go. Just pop that there.
Tipping away nicely, nearly there.
Okay. Whoo-hoo.
This is so easy to do, isn't it? Just kitchen scales.
Yeah.
The V60 drip decanter.
Great gift.
There you go. And again, you can do it on with a cup or a jug or anything like that.
Oh, smell that.
I'm good.
So it's the same coffee we've used for all the others, and it's going to taste totally different. We're going to get different flavour profile, although it's the same coffee we've used for all of the others.
Now, I know we're quite specific by using the scales, but if you just get the right amount of coffee and then you just put the right amount of water in, you can adjust it to your flavour. You know, sometimes you want to leave it for longer, you want a bit of a longer coffee. One thing we haven't talked about actually is on all these coffees, we're not adding any milk or any sugar to them, are we?
No, and there's a reason for that. So the milk, when we add milk, say for the traditional espresso, you're adding fatty acids. So you're taking the coffee, you're adding fatty acids to that. You're also, with the milk, you bring out you've got lactose, the natural sugar, and that's going to affect the flavour of the coffee. And with espresso, it's a really intense flavour. For these, we talked about subtle flavours, so tea-like, purest form. So if you were to add milk, you'd lose a load of flavour with this. Not to say you can't, however, if you were to do so, you're going to lose all those subtle flavours that we've been talking about today.
That's so true, actually. And if you have got a really good coffee that you've made very well, you'll get natural sweetness in there, won't you? You won't have to worry about putting sugar in.
So we're exploring, with all the coffees, we're exploring these new subtle flavours. It could be lychee, it could be stone fruit, or a hint of tobacco, vanilla. So we're looking for all of those profiles in the actual coffees themselves.
I'm going to try this. It's very clear, isn't it? It's a really good colour.
It's hold up to the light. Lovely.
And I'm expecting something out of this, actually. I'm expecting something from this coffee and this method. It's still quite hot.
What are you expecting?
I know this sounds odd, but when I was just brewing this coffee, as I put my nose over it, I just got a boom of peach.
Did you?
Like warm, just come out there like peach, and then a little bit of
stone
plum.
fruit.
Yeah,
all right,
and I was
right,
like,
okay.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So, and it really, this is a really good tip actually. As your coffee brews, so if you sniff the grinds and smell that, really get that when you grind it fresh, and then as the coffee brews, use all your senses. You know, we're using touch to make sure we've got the grind correctly. We're smelling it to make sure that we've got all these beautiful flavours coming out.
And so you should be able to pick out these things. You should be able to smell something there. Is it brewing properly? Is it burnt? You know. What
could commonly go wrong with the V60? Because I think it's a method that a lot of people at home are either already doing or very keen to do. Because I mean, this unit is very cheap.
Yeah. So basically, getting the grind wrong. We talked about that before. Too much water. Just making sure that we've got the right amount of ground coffee, 4 per cup.
Yeah.
Right amount of water at the right temperature. If you're just using a domestic kettle at home, just allowing that to boil and sit for a minute or so it drops in temperature. So it's going from 100 degrees to around 98.
Or just take it off just before.
Yeah. And then pouring it, but not all at once. It's a slow process. You're looking for that brew. So even with say cafetiere, you don't plunge it instantly. You've got to allow it to sit and brew for a few minutes. Absolutely, it's going to be worth it. It may be like, I need my caffeine fix. But if you allow the process to take its time, it's going to reap the rewards.
So there's some fantastic activities you can do around brewing, and they're so simple. The first one I would say is choose which brewing method you like the most and start there. Whether you want to start with an AeroPress or go for a siphon, and just keep going for it. Keep enjoying it, keep working it with different combinations, different grinds, different coffees, and see what really works for you. And then there's a key activity that I think you really should do. In Barista Championships, we have something called cupping, which is where 3 cups of coffee will be presented in front of you. 2 of them are exactly the same, and 1 is the odd one out, and you have to pick that one out. Why don't you get a group of friends together and using the same brewing method, maybe make an AeroPress twice in exactly the same way, but then make a 3rd one and extract for twice the time. Use twice as much coffee and see if your friends can pick the odd one out. And you can do that for each brew method or even different coffees. And as they're able to pick the odd one out, so their palates will improve and your palate will improve. And eventually, who knows, you might be entering Barista Championships and able to pick out one coffee from one side of the plantation and the other coffee from the other side. You can develop your palate, develop your techniques, and you can do it with your friends. So we've just shown you some fantastic brewing techniques. Each of them have their own merits. Each of them have their own little quirks. Now, some you may have not seen before, others you may already use, and hopefully we've either reinforced your knowledge or we've introduced you to something new. But the most important thing with any of these methods is it's your palate. So you choose, you experiment and find out what works for you. There's plenty of different videos and information on the internet, but what we've tried to do is I've asked Henry the questions that I think you would want to be answered. We've given you hints and tips and a little bit of insider knowledge so that these specific techniques that we've shown you should work every time. So this section is all about espresso. Now, espresso is the basis for nearly all the coffee drinks in your local coffee house. And what we're going to show you is what makes a good espresso and what makes a bad espresso. Because we want you to be able to enjoy the coffee when you go into a coffee house, when you know it's a good coffee. So you're not wasting your money. You need to get your money's worth from that barista, from that coffee shop. You don't want to be in a coffee shop not knowing that 2 blocks over there's a fantastic one that makes an amazing espresso and you don't know what it is. Also, if you've got an espresso machine at home, we want to show you how to maximize that, how to get the most out of it, because there's a huge difference between a good espresso and a bad espresso, and that is what we're going to show you.
So it's all about a grind again. We're back to where we started. Too coarse, the water and pressure is going to come through too quickly. Too fine, the water and pressure is going to struggle to come through, and when it does, it's going to drip through, and we're going to get a really bitter and stringent tasting coffee. So you want something in between. So the bucket of pebbles, a bucket of sand, somewhere in between.
So just on the grind, to the touch, what should it feel like?
We don't want flour.
Right.
We want something not as coarse as, say, the AeroPress or Chemex, but certainly not as fine as flour. So similar to sand.
So like a sandy.
Kind of, yeah. And one of the key ways of finding out if you've got it right, we're going to talk you through it, but basically, in your group handle, this is the filter basket or porter filter. This handle and this device here. So this is where the ground coffee sits. And weight-wise, this is double, got 2 spouts. Could be anything from 16, could be anything from 14 up to 25 plus. And on most of these, they'll have a little line that goes all on the inside of the basket. We want the coffee to, once that's tamped, we can go over that in a minute. Once that's tamped, it should sit at that line. If it's below the line, there's less resistance, the water's going to come through very quickly. If it's over that line and you're struggling to tamp down, the water and the pressure is going to struggle to force the coffee through.
Right.
So that's one of the parameters we're looking for. We're looking for, once tamped, the coffee sits at that line there, okay? Another thing to look for is, when we extract the coffee, we're looking for the coffee to come out of here. We're looking for honey from a spoon. So when you take a spoon and you dip it in the honey, it's fat at the top and it goes into a thin strand into the bowl or wherever. And that's what we're looking for here. Fat at the top, thin at the bottom. If it comes to too quickly and it's a fat pour, then the grind is too coarse. If it's dripping through, it's too fine. So remember, something in between. And we're looking for an extraction time of anything from 18, 23 seconds, around 23 seconds. So my next step is, I'm going to grind some coffee and pop it in here. Now we're going to tamp. So we want a flat, even surface. Tamp down and polish. And the polish is just a twist of the actual tamper itself, just to give us that nice, flat, even surface. And then we're just getting rid of any loose grinds that might end up in the cup. And we're good to go. We've already purged, so literally all we're doing now is drip handle in. Remember, we talked about honey from a spoon. Fast at the top, coming into a thin strand. You can see here we've now got our espresso. The next step is to try it. So one of the first things I'm going to do is to see how far it stretches. I'm looking for it to stretch all the way to the lip of the cup without the surface breaking. We talked about a crema earlier. That's this golden film on top. If your espresso doesn't have this, it's not an espresso. Start again. So, give it a smell. Good. And then, some stirs. If you imagine it started off there and it's got bigger in volume. So we want to bring all those flavors together. So by taking a spoon, 1, 2, 3, we brought all of those flavors together. It's now time to drink. Sweet, lots of flavour hitting you right on the tongue there. You've got the sourness and bitterness at the back, sourness and slight saltiness on the side. Together, it's rounded. It's a full-bodied coffee, really intense, more intense than anything we tried today. Yeah, real sweet flavours, really syrupy. And this is the basis of all the drinks we're going to make today. Get this right, spot on. Get it wrong, it can throw the rest of the drink. By adding milk to this, we're going to be making latte, cappuccino, flat white, a whole list of coffees. But this is the basis. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's start with the good. The good, we've got a good crema on there, the golden film on top of the espresso. You see that? There's also these lovely mottled marks on the actual surface of the coffee itself. We call that tigre, so stripes of the tiger, which indicate sweetness of the espresso. So with the good done, that's what we're looking for. That crema on top. The bad. Now, you can see there it's very oily residue. There's no crema, and that's the first extraction. So the coffee would have been too fine for the water and pressure to cut through. And the ugly. What's good to say about this? Absolutely nothing. There's no crema, it's watery, it doesn't even resemble coffee. That's what we're looking for. And either of these two are not a substitute and should be disregarded until you get this.
Are these ones the bad and the ugly specifically because of the grind?
Yeah. So the ugly, the grind's too fine. It's like flour, so the water and pressure struggle to force the coffee through. We haven't got the volume, as we do here. We haven't got the crema because of the extraction time, but what we do have is an oily substance in the cup, which is going to be very, very bitter and not very nice to drink at all. On to the ugly. Well, the grind was too coarse. The coffee has come through really quickly. Remember, the grind is too big. It's like grit. So the water and pressure has come through very, very quickly. There's been no resistance, and we've ended up with this. No crema whatsoever. So the Americano dates back to the Second World War when American GIs came over here. They didn't take to the British Constitution that of drinking tea and found the classic espresso too bitter for their taste. So what they did was add water, hot water, and the Americano was born. What we're doing here is we have hot water, we're extracting a double shot of coffee onto the surface rather than the other way round. The reason for that is the crema is building on top and diffusing down through the water. If we did it the other way around, we would be burning the espresso with hot water from the boiler, which would be about 9800 degrees of water going onto the crema and would then result in spoiling of the taste. What we have here is a nice crema on the surface. And that is the Americano. We're making a flat white here. What that is a double shot of espresso, textured milk, folded, no foam whatsoever, it's flat. This is made famous by New Zealanders and Australians who make a nice design on top, usually a fern leaf. And there's an argument to be said that this was first created in New Zealand, but the Australians lay claim to it also. So we've extracted for about 18-23 seconds. We've purged the steam arm, we've brought out any milk residue, now steaming the milk. And this is a whirlpool of steam. The steam from the boiler is spinning the milk and round and round. It's really important to remember the milk needs to be cold, fresh milk. Purge the steam arm once more. And now we're going in for the pour. Gentle spin of the cup, making sure we've got the crema all the way around the cup. And now have the milk. We folded the milk, we're now pouring. Ever decreasing circles, going in for the final pour. And there we have the flat white. Okay, we're going to make the latte now. So, shots of coffee and textured milk. Now, foam-wise, we're looking for at least a centimetre. No more than a centimetre, but a centimetre or less. Textured milk. Again, the importance of using cold, fresh milk. No point using milk that's been standing at ambient temperature. So we're spinning the milk again, as we did with the flat white. Purge the steam arm. We have our shot of coffee. Spinning the milk, folding the milk together. So we have one consistency, nice and glossy. And then a spin and a pour. So similar to the flat white, but this time it has a little bit more foam. And there we go, one latte. You can see here we have a centimetre of foam. That's exactly what we're after. So you're drinking the coffee through the foam. We want a centimetre or less. So we're making a cappuccino, double shot of coffee to the cup and milk. Again, cold, fresh milk. This time we're allowing a lot more air into this to allow foam. So we'll double the volume of milk in there, purely being half milk, quite heavy, and then the other half being foam. It's the foam that we want to get into the drink itself. A double shot of coffee, textured milk, top with foam, at least 1.5 centimeters in depth. If we do this correctly, a spoon should be able to balance on the foam itself. The drink originates from Kappa in Italy, where the monks would shave the top of their heads. They would have a brown robe, shave their head, and then we end up with a brown crema and white center, which is demonstrated here. We have a crema around the edge and foam in the middle. Now, a perfect cappuccino will allow us to rest the spoon on the foam if we have the right depth of foam, which is about 1.5%. And there we go, perfect cappuccino. So what I'm looking for here is depth of foam. So by pushing back, I've got peaks like a meringue. Micro bubbles. Pushing back, there's the coffee, and there's the foam. Okay, so we're going to do a modern twist on the cappuccino now. So, not necessarily with the crema on the outside or a pure white foam, but looking into a bit more of the latte art. So again, steaming the milk, spinning the milk in a whirlpool fashion, cold milk. Now what we're doing is we've got a hand on the side of the jug there. That tells me the temperature of the milk itself. It's too hot to touch, too hot to drink, and therefore you won't be able to drink it. So the barista's hand being aware of one of the variables, that is temperature. So we're putting chocolate on top of the crema to exaggerate the crema itself. And you'll see why as we pour. So we're spinning the milk, got a nice texture there. And around and around and around. Pour off and in. One more time and finish. So homework for you guys.
Activities to do.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah, that's definitely worth doing, isn't it? Actually making a good one, a bad one, and an ugly espresso, so you know the difference.
Taste-wise, you know what to look for. Also, when you're in a coffee shop, extraction times. Now we said 18 to 23 seconds, around that. If someone's extracting, say, 30 seconds plus, you're not going to get a good tasting coffee. It's over-extracted. You've got the best at it, let's say 23 to 25 seconds, and then you're diluting it. So you're ruining the flavour. So be wary of how long the barista's extracting your shot for.
That would be interesting to go into a few coffee shops and just time that. Because quite often, I mean, a lot of the machines are automated, aren't they? They're preset. But when they're not, you know, when someone says, I'll have a double espresso.
And they press the button again.
Yeah. And normally if you're asking in a cafe for a double espresso, when they be doing a double espresso anyway, so then it's a quadruple espresso.
No, basically the group handle itself has room for 2 shots, or if it's a single group handle, it's got room for 1 shot. So generally a single shot is around 7 or 8 grams plus. A double shot is 14, 15 plus, 15 to 25 plus. So you've got 2 shots, 1 shot. If you wanted 3 shots, then you'd have 2 shots and another shot.
An extra.
And you're paying for an extra shot if you want that extra kick.
So 18 to 23 seconds.
Extraction time,
9 grams, or 14 to anything up to 25.
Yeah.
Super. And any other activities that people could do?
Get good barista kit. That's always important too. So if you have a traditional machine at home, a tamp mat that you saw us tamping against the edge there, that's good.
Yeah, and practice tamping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Practice tamping. Just get your tamping right so that you get it consistent.
Yeah,
that's important.
Flat, even tamp. That's really important. Knowing to tamp into it, pushing down, blessing it, getting rid of any of the loose grinds. You don't want that ending up in the cup. So it's worth investing in a good weighty tamper. How does it feel in your hand? Does it feel comfortable? If not, then look around for something else.
So practice your tamping, make sure it's even. Go to the local coffee shops and
see what they've got.
Yeah, see how they're working. And get your good, bad and ugly right at home. And then do the spoon trick on if you're making cappuccinos at home.
Yeah.
You can do that on a flat white, can't you? And if it goes...
You can. Basically, you're looking at depth of foam. Remember, cappuccino is at least a centimetre. A latte is less than a centimetre. And flat white is none at all.
So those are your top tips here at the Gentleman Baristas with me, Richard Hardwick.
And me, Henry Ayres.
So we've just shown you a variety of techniques all based on espresso, and I thought it'd be good to ask Henry a few questions to get some tips and pointers along the way. What was very interesting there was that some of the Gentleman Baristas were actually making the coffee and Henry was able to describe what happened. So I've got a couple of questions myself. The flat white, are there any tricks or tips you could tell us to make the perfect flat white?
Cold, fresh milk.
Does it matter if it's skimmed, semi-skimmed, fat, soy?
Full fat's better. Homogenized, even better. The more, if you go semi-skimmed and skimmed, you're losing more fat molecules in the actual milk itself, so it starts making it harder. So the more fat you have in there, the easier it is to spin and get the texture you require. So for a flat white, we don't want any foam on top. The design, yeah, that's great. That's an added bonus. But we don't want any foam. It's a double shot of coffee, not one shot, not over extracted, but double shot of coffee and textured milk, and that's it.
And about how much coffee are we putting into these drinks? Does it vary or is it the same?
On a latte, we're looking for 1 shot. Cappuccino, 2 shots. Flat white, 2 shots. We're looking for about 25 mils per shot.
So the only one that isn't a double shot is the latte?
Correct.
And in the latte, how do we achieve that beautiful colour and the beautiful actual...
It's textured milk. So basically you're spinning the milk. You're looking for that whirlpool going on inside the jug. Spinning the milk, allowing the air in, listening for that sound. If you hear the cat being strangled, it's not right. That's not what we want. That will tell you that the milk is being overheated and burning. So as a barista, we're listening for that. So again, one of our sensors, does it sound correct? You're also spinning the milk. You shouldn't be needing to do it for too long. Literally seconds. A few seconds, say 5, 6 seconds. You got it done. You're ready to go.
And then the cappuccino. So we saw the original cappuccino, and then we saw the cappuccino with chocolate as well. Now I know some people get really annoyed by people putting chocolate on their cappuccino.
Yeah.
Because they want it traditionally, the traditional version of the cappuccino.
Yeah.
So what tips would you give people? Maybe first of all, just to try a cappuccino without chocolate on it.
Yeah, I mean, in Italy, you wouldn't have chocolate on your cappuccino. It's more of an English thing, or elsewhere in Europe, you just wouldn't. It's about the coffee and the milk coming together. So when you're ordering a coffee, it's knowing how you like it, how you want it. So hold on the chocolate, hold on the cinnamon, or the good barista will ask you if you want chocolate on your cappuccino or any of your drinks.
And are there any, I just want to ask about milk actually.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that the barista was tapping the jug.
Yeah.
Just to check the temperature.
Right, so your hand is as sensitive as the roof of your mouth. So don't ask a chef to make you a cappuccino. Hands like asbestos because they're holding hot pans and whatnot in the kitchen. So if we've got one hand on the jug, safety, the other hand on the side of the jug, we can feel how hot it's getting. So as I said, if it's too hot to handle, it's going to be too hot to drink. So we don't want to burn the customer's mouth with a hot beverage. So if it's too hot to handle, it's generally too hot to drink. If you're not sure, then pour a little bit off, just test that and return. So you've just got to get used to it. Now you'll see some places have a thermometer which they put into the jug. Tend to be unreliable, but again, we're looking for the barista's senses. Touch, feel. Does it feel hot? Too hot to handle? Is it really? Can I not hold this anymore? Okay, that's done. And then we put our hand over the top, bang the bubbles out if there are any, and fold it, spinning it round and just folding it over so we have one consistency. So for the cappuccino, you will start off with that much milk. You'll double it with the foam there, foam and textured milk. We want to bring the two together, so we'll spin it. We'll basically fold the two together until we have one consistency and then pour. Don't hesitate when you're pouring either. You must...
Just do it as in one motion almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, don't
Commit
break it.
to the pour.
Commit to the pour.
Okay. Commit to the pour. When you're pouring, don't hesitate because the milk will sneak out under the foam. It's heavier than the foam, so it will sneak out from the jug.
I've got one question about Americano actually, which is a lot of times when I order an Americano in a restaurant, in fact, a lot of times in a restaurant, I'll ask for a filter coffee and they will automatically go Americano. And I will go, no, that is not what I asked for. Because a lot of people aren't educated enough to know the difference really. They presume I'm asking for a black coffee, but I'm actually wanting a filter coffee. I want a brewed coffee.
Yeah.
So things to watch out for with the Americano are, I mean, simple things really, aren't they? Like you put the espresso in first and then pour the hot water on, and it's just gonna burn it.
It's going to affect the flavour. So be aware of what the barista's doing. How do you do your Americano? Now, Americano is traditionally through espresso machine. If you want a filter coffee or brewed coffee, it's through one of the brew methods we used. Filtered through a filter paper, ending up into a vessel. Americano is an espresso-based drink. And for me, I prefer, taste-wise, water first, crema on top, the double shot sits on the top and filters down. It's not a cordial, you're not diluting it. You want it to sit at the top and filter down through the water. So just be wary of what you're asking and whether the barista serving you understands your order.
I've got just a few more questions actually about flavour.
Right.
So just going back, what flavours and textures are we looking for in the flat white?
So for generally all of them, remember every coffee you drink should be a lovely experience. You should take one sip and go, ooh, can't wait to get back to that. The conversation may stop because you want to return to it. So more often than not, you're getting caramel flavours coming through, and that's could be indicative of the coffee used, the blend or the roast. It might have fruit qualities or stone fruit or chocolate or caramel flavours or vanilla flavours. And that will cut through the milk itself and it would be enhanced by the natural sugars, i.e. the lactose in the milk.
So the coffee should consistently taste of the coffee and the flavours from that coffee, but the variations will be in how it cuts through that milk.
Yeah, you want the coffee to be the dominating factor there. It needs to cut through the milk and be dominant. If it's not, then it's being served in a too big a vessel and the coffee just can't stand up to it. So generally you're looking for a cup about 10 or 12 ounce max for a coffee to actually be able to cut through and really make a difference. The synergy of the two coming together.
Synergy. I guess the main thing that you have to get right when you're dealing with any of these drinks is get your espresso right first. Know what a good espresso looks like and a good espresso tastes like, and then you'll be on your way.